for My Beloved Favorite, Novel Version. Chapter 1. Part 2. I drove my own small carriage to the Marquis territory. As the sun had completely disappeared from the sky, only the twinkling starlight illuminated the darkness. The night was breathtaking, but there was no time to appreciate its beauty. At last, I reached the grand estate of Kael. I leapt out of the carriage and vigorously shook the heavy iron gate. "Hey, is anyone there? I have urgent news to deliver." The gatekeeper emerged with a scowl on his face.
"This is the home of Marquis Kaelus, the Lord of Ilion. Don't cause a scene."
I had spoken informally, but it was too late to correct myself. Rather than wasting time revealing my identity, I needed to ensure Kael's safety first. Has the Marquis returned home? It is a serious matter.
"He has just arrived, but he is not receiving any visitors at the moment."
"Then fetch me a butler. We must ensure the Marquis' safety immediately." My tone may have sounded strange, as the gatekeeper frowned, before heading back to the mansion.
"Fine. Wait here for a moment."
Each passing moment felt agonizingly slow. I could not afford to stand idly by until the gatekeeper returned. In my past life, before entering the novel, I went through my school gates by climbing them, so I decided to do the same with the mansion's iron gate. Oh, was I always this strong? Even though I had possessed this body for about 3 years, I have only just realized this after regressing back today. The night was devoid of moonlight, and strangely, no one stopped me as I sprinted through the front yard. An eerie silence filled the air. It felt like something ominous was about to happen. Instinctively, I knew where to head. During the novel's peak, I spent a fortune gathering information about the world and its characters, including Kael's mansion layout. Pushing open the unlocked front door, I ran up the magnificent staircase at the center. A voice cried out, "What? It's a man!" It wasn't a he, but rather a she. However, there was no time for correction. In the midst of the second-floor hallway, I spotted the head butler who exclaimed, "What about the Marquis?" My fierce and determined spirit led me to turn the handle he had been holding and push open the door. Almost simultaneously, the butler and I entered the room. Instantly, my eyes caught sight of the scene unfolding itself at that moment. "Kael!"
"Master."
A shadowy figure stood, dagger raised and pointed towards their own chest. Startled by our sudden appearance, the figure halted and became motionless. Without hesitation, I leapt forward to intervene. "Stop!" Instinctively, he moved his hand away and dropped the blade to the floor. In the blink of an eye, everything came to a halt. The figure collapsed onto the floor. By a mere hair's breadth, Kaelus was saved. In the dimly lit chamber, 3 figures stood tensed, staring at each other. It was a peculiar sight. It was I, the head butler, and my beloved, Kaelus, who had narrowly escaped the clutches of death. My hands quivered uncontrollably and my heart pounded, with an intensity that matched the gravity of the situation we had just averted. Gasping for air, I struggled to compose myself.
"What is it?"
The voice echoed through the room, filled with icy fury. It was the first words spoken by Kael to me, and though his tone was harsh, a part of me couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. My favorite, with his long silver hair and flowing pajamas, stood before me, his attire disheveled, ready to plunge a dagger into his own chest. Amidst the chaos, this is what captures my attention. It appears that I am yet to shed my role as a mere extra. Anyways, it is best to avoid the impending wrath that will follow suit soon. For the time being, I shall withdraw from the presence of Kael and politely bow to the butler. "Please take good care of the Marquis," I uttered, my words laced with sincerity. However, before I could make my exit, the butler, now fully aware of my presence, hurriedly called out to me, halting my steps.
Milady, please refrain from returning just yet. Kindly wait in the room next door for a moment.
The butler proved to be quite sharp. Despite my disheveled appearance from leaping over the iron gate and dashing across the yard, he immediately recognized my noble status. I gave a swift nod, acknowledging the situation. All right, then I will be waiting. The experienced butler would take care of the rest, ensuring Kaelus remains calm and doesn't repeat his actions. While biding my time in the room nearby, I carefully mapped out the next steps in my mind. My ultimate objective was to help Kaelus find contentment and joy in life, free from the burden of his desire for death. To achieve this, I had to address the root cause of his unshakable despair and pain. To tell the truth, I have no desire to evaluate the outcomes of my choices. All I care about is seeing my beloved favorite happy, no matter what. I simply wanted to make him happy. At the end of the day, isn't this entire universe confined within the pages of a mere novel? For those who call it home, it may hold the essence of reality, but to me, it appears entirely fictional. I have no intention of shedding tears for morality and justice like the female lead, all the while suppressing my own desires. I am only here for my favorite. I am not a character in this novel. This place isn't my world, my reality. I had already reached the end of the novel, so why don't I shake things up a bit? From now on, I will create my own story. And the main character will be the neglected second lead in the original.
Milady, the Marquis requests your presence.
The butler acknowledged me with the utmost respect. Yes, please lead the way. Perhaps after successfully rescuing Kaelus, I felt a bit more relaxed, so I responded with a smile. As I rose from my seat, the butler briefly hesitated before bowing his head.
I am completely at a loss for words. You saved my master's life. I cannot find the words to express my gratitude.
There is no need to thank me. I'm glad I got here before it was too late.
The Marquis is currently in a sensitive state. If he says something impolite, please understand.
I will. Thank you for your concern. I could sense his genuine concern in his words, maybe because he looked after Kaelus, who had lost his parents at a young age, treating him as if he were his own son. Accompanied by the butler, I found myself once again at the entrance of Kael's room.
Master Kaelus, the lady has arrived.
No response came from the inside, but the butler gestured for me to step inside.
He may come off as quite irritable.
Oh, I understood. After his failed attempt, it was understandable that he was not in a calm state of mind. I couldn't help but wonder if he would direct his anger towards me for intervening. Nevertheless, despite the potential backlash, I knew I had to face the situation head-on. I may have blocked his sword right away, but if I want him to continue to live, I knew I had to confront the overwhelming despair that had consumed him. To get rid of the shadow of death from Kael, I will set my foot down firmly. Kael sat on the sofa, resembling a work of art. His long silver hair cascaded over his shoulder, framing his face, while his enigmatic purple eyes sparkled like precious gems. The loose pajamas he wore were still slightly askew, adding to his overall disheveled yet captivating appearance.
Who are you?
A hollow, bone-chilling voice echoed through the room, sending shivers down my spine. Despite the fear creeping within me, I mustered up the courage to puff out my chest, determined not to show any signs of weakness. With a steady voice, I introduced myself. My name is Hestia. It was my first time speaking to an important character in the novel. I couldn't help but wish for a more ideal setting, but then again, was it really the right moment to be picky? We narrowly avoided a potentially dangerous situation. It's a huge relief to have reached the Marquis before any harm came to him. The Marquis is deeply cared for by many, and I'm certain everyone was taken aback by the incident. I feel a great sense of relief knowing that you are unharmed. Kael's eyes, a striking shade of purple, bore into me with a deep sense of resentment. The intensity of his gaze weighed heavily on my chest, making it difficult to breathe. However, I gathered my composure and took a deep breath, determined to explain my perspective in the calmest manner possible. I'm certain you must be feeling quite embarrassed to unexpectedly come across me.
What do you want?
Huh? My attempt to explain the situation was abruptly halted by a chilling voice devoid of any empathy for the world.
What do you want?
What should I say? Honestly, I don't know. Understanding the psyche of an individual who was abruptly stopped in their attempt to end their own life was not within my area of expertise. Did his anger stem from my intervention at the very moment he was prepared to embrace death? Or did he feel gratitude for preventing a significant and impulsive act from taking place? Regardless of the reason, this man now appeared to be disturbed by everything before him. His eyes, demeanor, and tone of voice were clear indicators of his distress. Instead of dwelling on the identity of the unexpected visitor who intruded into his room, all he desired was for it to disappear from his sight. In a state of utter confusion and exhaustion, Kael could almost agree to anything, no matter how unreasonable it seemed. Thus, I exclaimed, I wish to become the Marchioness. His face turned ashen, contorting with an indescribable emotion. Did my request sound too preposterous? A sudden wave of embarrassment washed over me, yet I found myself unable to cease my ramblings. I know this may sound completely absurd, but I have a single wish in my existence, and the more I am in your presence, the stronger it becomes. If this proposal troubles you, let me be by your side as your assistant, so you can truly understand the kind of person I am.
Do as you wish.
A voice, devoid of any emotion, responded. I was stunned. Huh? I exclaimed, unable to comprehend the meaning behind those words. Kael, moving with an eerie grace, stood up from his position. With an air of irritation, he made his way towards the bed, turned around, and nonchalantly laid down. My ears couldn't believe what they had heard, causing my heart to race uncontrollably. Suppressing my emotions, I mustered the courage to ask once more. Do you truly wish for me to be your wife?
Summon the butler. Have a conversation with him regarding your requirements.
He responded abruptly, reclining in bed with his back facing the room. Oh. Is this for real? You agree to this absurd demand without hesitation? Have you truly given up on your life? Are you out of your mind? Who did you mistake me for? However, a wave of sadness engulfed me, and tears threatened to spill. For it was undeniable, Kael had indeed lost all hope in life. I see. I'll go speak with the butler. He didn't even glance in my direction as I sadly exited the room. As I stepped outside the door, the butler stood there, patiently waiting for me. With a bitter smile, I inquired, were you able to catch any of our conversation inside? Considering the possibility that the room might not have been completely soundproof, it was likely that someone had overheard bits and pieces. However, the butler politely shook his head and replied,
I assure you, milady, I didn't hear a thing.
Then this will take quite a while. Can I have a moment of your time? I inquired. The butler, understanding the importance of our discussion, agreed to my request. He promptly sent another servant to Kael's room, ensuring that Kael would not engage in any rash behavior.
Make sure the Marquis is resting soundly.
Yes, sir.
The servant, showing respect, bowed politely before entering Kael's room with utmost silence.
Then please, follow me this way, milady.
I nodded in response and quietly trailed behind him as he led me into a nearby vacant room. It is late, but allow me to introduce myself. My name is Hestia, the daughter of the Lord of Elia. I disclosed my identity using the persona I had paid for as a devoted follower. The truth was that the land of Elia was nothing more than a small, mountainous region, and on paper, my stepfather, who held the title of Baron, appeared to be a penniless man. However, our decision to enter into an arrangement where I would become his adopted daughter, in exchange for a substantial sum of money, proved to be a mutually beneficial contract.
I understand now, Lady Hestia. I cannot express my gratitude enough.
He expressed sincerely. After exchanging pleasantries, the butler performed another respectful bow, while I hastily gestured with my hand. There is no need to thank me, but brace yourself, for what I'm about to reveal might leave you in shock. I made up my mind to be completely transparent with the butler, who genuinely cared for Kaelus. He stared at me with a mix of curiosity and anticipation.
What is it, my lady?
Unlike Kael, who had succumbed to depression, this butler possessed a rational mind. A new wave of anguish constricted my throat, different from the previous one. I know it may seem impulsive, but I sort of approached the Marquis with a request to become the Marchioness. Surprisingly, he remained silent and suggested discussing it with the butler instead. I glanced at him, feeling a pang of guilt wash over me. To my surprise, the middle-aged man looked at me with wide eyes.
Did you really ask him that?
He inquired. Of course, you can accuse me of taking advantage of the Marquis condition, but I have a strategic plan in place to prevent the Marquis from acting irrationally as he did today. In order to execute my plan effectively, I needed to have some authority, hence my bold request to the Marquis. The butler maintained his silence, a stoic presence in the room. It was only natural given the circumstances. How could one not be taken aback when an unknown woman appeared in the dead of night, proclaiming herself as the future wife of the Marquis? The butler's composure seemed unyielding, almost as if he posed a greater challenge than even Kael himself. You must be wondering how I came to know of today. It may be hard to fathom, but the truth is, the plan may seem cliché, but it was foolproof. From that moment, I am a character in a novel. A character in a fantasy novel where the impossible can become reality. I possess the gift of foresight. I can see not just the present, but also the future. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt as I watched his jaw drop, but as an actor, I had to make my performance convincing. The Marquis had acquired an incredibly valuable pink diamond, intending to present it as a gift to Saintess Diana, who had just been crowned as the princess. Unfortunately, he was unable to actually give it to her in the end.
How did you come to know about this?
The butler was taken aback. However, those who had avidly read the novel 9 times had no other option but to remember this detail. While we are at it, let's speculate on where the diamonds might be kept. Perhaps the precious jewel is currently stored in Kael's library drawer. If you doubt my words, feel free to go and check for yourself. The butler let out a quiet sigh in response to my confident statement. I continued in a serious tone, expressing my thoughts. The Marquis evening has already been spoiled by me, and I am determined to use my unique ability for his benefit. I do not intend to become the Marquis companion in reality. However, to the outside world, I can be perceived as his spouse. If necessary, I am willing to draft a contract. Nevertheless, within this family, I will not assume the role of a marchioness. I vow to never engage in any actions that may bring harm to the Marquis. Engaging in a conversation about Kael's marriage with anyone other than Kael himself seemed quite absurd, but circumstances had forced me into this situation. As the words spilled out of my mouth in a rush, my heart pounded relentlessly. I couldn't help but wonder if my persuasive efforts would bear fruit. Could I possibly overcome the challenge posed by the Marquis Butler? Gazing at my opponent, who remained tight-lipped and unyielding, I decided to press on. Prince Helios, the Marquis has embraced him as his closest confidant. Doesn't it strike you as peculiar for two inseparable friends to allow a third person to come between them? This world exists solely within the realm of imagination, a place where fabricated chance held more weight than practical reasoning. It may be a bit daring, but why not take a gamble? Could this be a sign of success? The butler turned to me and spoke.
I must admit, I feel quite embarrassed about this situation. I will draft the necessary documents as instructed by the Marquis Savior. However, we will proceed with the procedure once the Marquis has composed himself and clearly expresses his intentions.
I nodded in agreement. Of course, I'll wait. With a nod, he continued.
It's too late for you to return home tonight, Lady Hestia. Please rest in this room, and I will see you in the morning.
He then gracefully exited the room, maintaining his polite demeanor until the very end. I found myself in solitude, with no one around. It was in that moment that a heavy sigh escaped my lips. Doubt crept in, questioning the choices I had made. This was a new experience for me, as I had never been married in either worlds. The magnitude of this decision weighed heavily on my mind. Frustration bubbled up within me, and I couldn't help but mutter, "Oh, I don't know. Someone tell me what to do." I tried to shake off the overwhelming anxiety, desperately seeking answers. I never intended to get married in the first place. Initially, I had planned to work as Kaelus' assistant or secretary and see where it would lead me. When I looked into his eyes and saw the emptiness that hinted at his willingness to give up on life at any moment, my thoughts became muddled when questioned about my desires. It was more of a spontaneous decision rather than a carefully crafted plan. Despite that, I had a sense that I was on the right path. As I had mentioned to the butler, it would be better for me to become the spouse of the Marquis in order to fully utilize his prestigious position. My plan was to assume the role of a prophet and claim to possess the ability to foresee the future, all because I wanted to bring back my beloved. That was my sole purpose for my existence in this world. End of part 2.